The experts tell us to look out for UCLA, but it's the Crimson Tide of Alabama, which is the #1 seed. And working with us today is Kathy Johnson. And Kathy, sort all this out for us, if you will, and tell us what we can expect in this competition.
Well, Tim, even though UCLA has been ranked #1 most of the year in the coaches poll, they had a tough finish at regionals and the loss of Tanya Service, which will force them to compete in the early session. That's definitely a disadvantage, so they are indeed the underdogs. Two of the top seeds, LSU and Alabama, have been hot all year long. Georgia had its problems most of the year. They were the defending champions, but they might just put it all together for today.
All right, Kathy. Now, what about the Lady Utes of Utah? What advantage do they have now playing here in their home arena?
You can never discount Utah. They're always a well-prepared team, and it's always an advantage to compete in your hometown. But it's an advantage to all these teams. It's a very high energy level crowd here, so it'll help bring up all the performances of all the kids. Most importantly, there are at least 7 teams here that think they can win the national championships.
It's the NCAA Women's Gymnastics Championship coming up.
This special edition of CBS Sports Saturday is sponsored by Michelob. So exceptionally smooth, the night belongs to Michelob. Price Pfister, the fabulous faucet with a funny name. And by Haviland Supreme Motor Oil, the motor oil that's cool under fire.
Welcome back to the John M. Huntsman Center, where nearly 7,000 fans have gathered to watch the nation's best collegiate gymnast. 12 teams made it to the finals by virtue of their qualifying scores at the regional tournaments. The teams are seeded in order, as you see them, by the national qualifying scores achieved. And Alabama, as we mentioned, the top seed. The Tide is on a roll. Because of the 12-team field, the lower 6 seeds competed in the first session. UCLA, the 7th seed, was in that unenviable group, and I say that because there has never been a championship team come out of the early session. Somewhat unusual in that the Bruins did have an 11-0 regular season, winning the Pac-10 title, and going into the NCAA regionals, they were ranked #1 in the coaches poll. Kathy?
Coach Jerry Tomlinson thinks that had a positive effect on the team despite their performance at regionals.
They were training well, they were competing well, and they always showed little signs of anger when there was any lower voting, if we got lesser votes one week.
But when it came time to crown the champions, it was Oregon State on the winner's stand, with UCLA a disappointing second. Just as devastating was the loss of key gymnast and team leader Tanya Service.
We didn't lose by that much, and had we had Tanya, even if it hadn't been a major injury, I think the morale would have been higher and the spirit would have been better.
Though she was not ready to compete today, Tanya worked out with the Bruins and sensed a rekindled spirit and drive.
After regionals, they really pulled themselves together, and last week in practice, they looked much better than they ever have before, and they really want it.
I think it would be a victory for us to hit, just hit and just do the best that we can and just sit and wait for the next round to come. As long as we're pleased with what we do, I think that's a victory in itself.
The first event for the Bruins was the vault, and Renee Kelly, a 5'3" freshman, set the standard.
This being one of their strongest events, UCLA counted on this event for a high team score.
Her career best on the vault, 9.75. Her score here, 9.55. UCLA average, 9.55 on the vault. Now, the Bruins carried that emotional pace and positive momentum through all 4 apparati. Kim Hamilton solidified UCLA's lead with a strong performance on the floor exercise.
All the girls on UCLA's team did a tremendous job on floor exercise, and this was their cleanup batter. Her floor routine is always a highlight in the competition.
She is the defending national champion in this event.
Wonderful music selection. She's great tumbling. She really combines her strengths, high tumbling, and watch the dance. She has a very magnetic quality, really brings the audience in.
She really seems to enjoy it. She won the all-around floor exercise at the West Regionals with a 9.8.
It's definitely her favorite event. It's obvious the judges were aware of the potential of this team because the scores were relatively high even though they competed in the early session. Historically, scores have been kept low in the early session, so judges have a place to go with the scores for the higher seeded teams.
Hamilton's 9.7 was, according to Hamilton, her best performance of the year. And UCLA abolished the myth about the first session scoring, beating the national record score for the finals and topping the score of last year's champion, the Georgia Bulldogs. Bruin coach Jerry Tomlinson was obviously pleased and very optimistic.
Well, there's no way we should not be in the top third with a performance like this. This is going to be hard to beat. But then again, it's in the judges' hands right now. And, of course, our competitors, they could come out and shine better than we did. But I don't know how.
And so the UCLA Bruins, having done everything in their power with a record score, could now just sit, wait, and watch as the top 6 seeded teams were about to begin the second session. The University is the scene for the NCAA Women's Gymnastics Championships, and we're all set to begin the second session. Women's Gymnastics has 4 events, and since there are 6 teams, 2 will have a bye. Florida on the vault, Utah on the uneven bars, Oregon State starts on the balance beam, Georgia begins on the floor exercise, and LSU and Alabama both have byes. So most of the attention in this arena will be focused on the bars, where the home team Utes are about to start their charge.
And helping coach Utah is Megan Marsden, former 2-time national NCAA champion, and also just an all-time favorite in collegiate gymnastics.
First up for Utah, Cheryl Weatherstone, an All-American senior from Darien, Connecticut.
Utah is very innovative on this event. Slight form break there. Watch this move coming up right here. It's a giant going the opposite direction on the high bar. Very unique move.
In the background on the beam, Oregon State, all 4 disciplines in use.
Giant swing. Here's her dismount. It's a double twisting flyaway. Great routine for her.
A fine performance by Cheryl Weatherstone, who gets Utah off to a quick start. Keep in mind, each team uses 6 competitors per event. The top 5 scores are taken. The lowest score dropped to gain the total. The team total is cumulative. On the vault, Melissa Miller from the University of Florida, 5'6" junior from Pensacola, Florida.
Melissa looks really strong coming into this competition. It's a handspring front. Step on the end, which will cost her. Now that vault comes out of a 9.8 because of its difficulty factor. Watch again. Good rise off the vault. And there's that step. Overall, though, it was a good vault.
1987 All-American in the all-around last year in the NCAA. She gets a 9.50, as does Cheryl Weatherstone of the University of Utah. The University of Georgia is on the floor exercise, a discipline the defending champions feel very comfortable and confident about.
I feel it's our strongest event, and if we can open up strong on the floor exercise, I feel that that kind of momentum will carry us through the meet.
And that chore falls on Julie Click, a 22-year-old senior at Georgia who excels in this event.
Now, Georgia's had its problems all year long, and mainly due to injuries, particularly to Julie. Good first tumbling pass. It was a front tuck through to a double back. Now, she's had limited training because of a back injury. If that's ever going to show up, it's going to be in this event, floor exercise. It's a strong event for Julie. Here comes her middle tumbling run. Double back. She touched the floor. That's going to be 2 or 3 tenths off.
Julie Click is a native of Cleveland, Ohio, majoring in exercise and sports science.
That's a major break in a competition this close.
Keep in mind, you can only drop 1 score.
This could have been a really strong event for Georgia to start on, but they've already had a couple of falls here. Even though the teams in the Southeastern Conference are highly competitive with one another, it's really a sense of pride having 4 of the top 6 seeds SEC teams. It's really unfortunate having that fall in the middle of a routine. The rest of the routine was nice.
Each competitor at the University of Georgia knows the importance of each score. The Lady Dogs have been here before. A year ago, this was the crowning moment when the Lady Bulldogs snapped the University of Utah's 6-year championship reign, and folks began to take notice of the talent and the spirit in the Southeast Conference.
1, 2, 3, go!
A lot of the top age group gymnasts in the country come out of the Northeast, and there's a few schools up there that are high caliber and nationally ranked teams, but there are not as many as down south.
Sarah Patterson remembers the way it was when she started at Alabama.
There was a red wrestling mat on the floor with a hole in it, and I remember going to the dormitories and asking people if they'd ever done gymnastics before, and we got a few girls that had some experience and some cheerleaders, and we kind of transposed them into gymnasts, and that first year was the first winning season that the program had ever had.
Last month, the Crimson Tide rolled to their first conference title ever, helped in no small way by Kim Masters, who gave up a solid chance at the Olympics for a place on the all-conference team in the Southeast Conference.
I may be kind of sad when I see the Olympics on TV, you know, but basically I didn't think that my body would physically be able to handle the last year around. I was taking like 12 aspirins a day just to be able to work out, and I just didn't think I could mentally or physically go through the last year, because it was just going to be a tremendous strain on my body, and I didn't think I'd be able to handle it.
It was not so long ago. Lucy Weiner had her sights fixed on the Olympics, but 5 knee operations ruined her dream, a dream which once seemed so very real.
It really didn't hit me until the girls marched out, and I was standing there for compulsories, and I was looking down at them marching out, and that's when it really just got to me, because when I first heard it, I was like, well, I'm still going to compete tomorrow. I'm still going to compete tomorrow.
So it's do or die for your old school. That's the way it is in the Southeast Conference, where the best keep bringing out the best in each other.
It helps us because it puts us in a high-pressure situation early in the year when most of the teams don't even see the best teams until they see them at nationals. Sometimes that can be a little intimidating.
Once upon a time, it seemed there were only 2 sports in the South, fall football and spring football. But now it appears the gridiron has laid the foundation for other sports, like gymnastics.
I could walk in and I could talk about Bear Bryant and the tradition at the university, and the mothers and fathers, they knew it and they appreciated it, and I think that they trusted that we would have a great program.
Next up, the Tide rolls to the vault. Welcome back to the Huntsman Center, where the University of Utah is the current leader. Julie Click of Georgia received a 9.05 on the floor exercise, and the defending champions have dropped into 4th place. Georgia and Utah will now sit out of rotation. Alabama goes to the vault, Florida to the bars, LSU on the beam, and Oregon State to the floor exercise. This is Allison Blumberg of Alabama, a 5'2" sophomore from Potomac, Maryland.
Now, each vault performed has a maximum possible score based on its difficulty. To layout Sukahara, that scored from a 9.9, which did it quite well.
Kathy, she says she's been concentrating on the vault and floor all year.
Watch the perfect body position laid out all the way around and a good landing. Could have been higher. It's a great vault.
They say she's capable of a 9.5 in this event, and that's what she gets, a 9.5 for Allison Blumberg. This is Monique Munson of Oregon State. Oregon State, the only team to defeat UCLA this year.
And that really surprised a lot of people. Their coach, Jim Turpin, however, has done a great job with this team. They've come a long way. First tumbling pass is a double tuck. She does her second pass immediately after the first. It's a double twist. She's a little slow on the tumbling.
Now she's starting to smile. Kathy, how much does a successful first pass help you mentally?
Tremendously. Really, it's a relief to get through those first 2 major tumbling passes. Then you can get into the body of the routine. She has a nice presence on the floor.
Monique Munson is a nursing major.
Here's her last tumbling run. As you can see, she doesn't have the power some of the other gymnasts have. She finished with a full twist. It's a good, solid routine for her.
She enjoyed it, and so did the Oregon State fans. On the beam, LSU. The Tigers, coached by Dee Dee Pollock. This is Patty Kickerfer, a 5'3" junior from Laurel, Maryland.